On April 16th, 2013, the FBI officially announces they are taking over the investigation of the Boston Marathon bombing that happened the day prior on what was supposed to be Boston's happiest day, which is known as Patriots Day, running the 117th Boston Marathon. Cheers echoed through the city. Then all of a sudden, two explosions shattered the city spirit and sent the city into chaos with heroic responses and unprecedented manhunt that gripped the nation. Join us today as we explore one of the darkest moments in sports history and how we took this darkness, and as we find out, was this the most devastating moment in sports history? Today on Daily Sports History.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Welcome to Daily Sports History. I'm Ethan Reese, your guide, as you daily learn more about sports history, increasing your sports knowledge. Now, the Boston Marathon is one of the most popular marathons, and it's historically the oldest marathon in America, as it was inspired by the 1896 Summer Olympic Games. That's the very first Olympic Games. And in the year later, they held the first Boston Marathon. That wasn't even 26.2 miles. As back then, the marathon, the mileage fluctuated, as honestly, it was hard to tell mileage back then. Today, could you tell where 26 miles is on your own without a computer or your phone? I couldn't. So the fact that we were able to even measure it to be close to the 26.2, which wasn't official until years after. And the course itself originally ran from Metcalfe's Mill in Ashland to Irvington's Oval in Boston. And in 1924, they moved the starting line westward to Hopkinsville as the course lengthened to meet the Olympic standards, which had recently been set at the 1908 London Games. And this tradition actually inspired the Boston Marathon to be held on Patriots Day, a holiday that commemorates the Battle of Lexington and Concord in 1775. Initially was observed on April 19th, but it shifted to be the third Monday in April, starting in 1969. So it moves around. It's not always the same day. So it gives you that long weekend that we all love to have in America, because we don't get enough time off, let's be honest. And over the years, the Boston Marathon has grown. As we don't think of Boston, they're a great sports town, but they're not number one in a lot of different things. But it's the number one marathon. There's the New York Marathon. There's other marathons around the world, but Boston's like the number one across the world. In the first year, it only had 15 participants. And now annually, there's on average 30,000 runners that want to run it annually. And even more aren't able to register for the marathon. To register for it, you have to work your way and qualify to get into the marathon. And over 500,000 spectators line the route every year. And it has been held every year since its inception, except for during the pandemic in 2020. It was the first year they did not have it. So on April 15th, 2013, 117th Boston Marathon. It was in full swing, Patriots Day. People were celebrating. It's a huge day in Boston. Everyone just had a long weekend, and runners are running as fast as they can. It's a huge moment for these runners. It's a huge moment for the city. Everyone enjoys this moment. Anytime a city takes a day off, the city comes together in enjoyment. And at 2:49 that day is when everything changed. Some participants had already finished the race. And so the crowds were all gathered around the starting line as competitors were starting to finish the race. And everyone was excited to see their friends and family finish, as well as, top competitors finish. And in that moment at 2:49, 2 homemade bombs were detonated near the finish line, just 14 seconds and 210 yards apart. Both bombs were detonated Boylston Street, and it sent shrapnel flying, causing spectators and runners to panic. And with the second one, it meant even more fear started, as people were scared that there would be even more. People were scrambling, trying to flee. Others were assisting the injured. There ended up being 3 casualties. Martin Richard, who was 8 years old, Crystal Campbell, who was 29 years old, and Lindsay Liu, a 23-year-old. I say their names because we often forget the fatalities in these moments. We focus on the people that did it, but we need to remember these people's names. This is important. Victims are really important. And these weren't the only victims. There were 281 people who were injured, suffering severe trauma, and 16 individuals lost limbs. And part of this was because these devices were pressure cooker bombs, meaning they packed them with shrapnel, basically nails, ball bearings, any kind of things to maximize harm to people. Not necessarily meant to kill, but meant to wound and maim. So quickly after these bombs went off, a 15-block area around this was immediately coned off as a crime scene, as they wanted to find immediately what happened. They went into chaos mode to try to prevent and try to catch exactly what happened. And this was a unique manhunt because it was 2013. The internet, social media, all these things were around. Pictures were everywhere being posted, which gave extreme access to the authorities to be able to show this. And within 3 days, the FBI released photos and surveillance footage of the suspects, which were 2 brothers who were Tamerlan and Jakar Tsarnaev, who had immigrated here from Chechnya. But by this point, they didn't have names. They just had photos, and they asked the public to come out and help identify them. And they did. It also helped that same day at 9:31, the brothers approached an MIT police officer, Sean Collier, who was sitting in his patrol car on the campus in attempts to steal his service weapons, and they shot him multiple times, point-blank range, in the side of his head, which resulted in another death from these 2 killers. Shortly after killing him, they carjacked a man in a Mercedes SUV and forced him to withdraw $800 from the ATM as they drove towards Watertown, Massachusetts. And early the next morning at 12:44 a.m., police located the brothers in Watertown, leading to a firefight where the brothers threw homemade explosives at the officers while exchanging gunfire. And Tamerlan was critically injured during the shootout. And Jakar attempted to flee in a stolen SUV as he ran over his brother's body that laid in the street, and his brother would later be pronounced dead. So there's one less killer out there to worry about, but they still needed to find his brother. And it was a citywide manhunt. Authorities put in a shelter-in-place order for the residents. Anyone caught outside their house would be questioned by police, as police would go through multiple houses. Then on that 19th at 6:42 p.m., a Watertown resident discovered Jakar hiding inside a dry docked boat in his backyard and alerted authorities, who used flashbang grenades to coax him out to take him into authority, which ended a 4-day manhunt. Now later, it would be found out that there was connections to Al-Qaeda because of this, and it was an act of terrorism. And Jakar was sentenced on 30 charges of bombing and sentenced to death on several accounts. After this, the slogan Boston Strong became synonymous in the sporting world. It was done all over sports, done by the Celtics, the Bruins, the Patriots. All major sports supported this, as well as colleges and just the town itself. And the country supported Boston during this time, as this was an act of terrorism which we hadn't seen the likes of since 9/11. But the question was, after this, what do you do? Do you hold the marathon again? It's held on like a special day, Patriots Day. It would seem almost crazy to not come back and hold the marathon, which they did, where they had a record-breaking over 35,000 runners participating, showing defiance against the terror. And now I've looked up how to pronounce this. There's a lot of letters in that name. I'm sorry if I got it wrong. Kel Vici, who, despite his unique name, was the first American man to win the Boston Marathon since 1983, symbolizing the triumph and how America came together after these deadly attacks. And of course, There was increased security after this enhanced measures, as there was bomb sifting dogs used regularly, rooftop surveillance, increased police presence throughout, and new safety protocols were put banning backpacks and large bags among the route of the race. These measures have helped keep it safe since, and likely we won't have something like this happen again at the Boston Marathon. We usually never know when these terrorist attacks are going to happen. They happen at random times when we're not ready, but it's good to know that we are advancing in our reaction to them. And we often do forget about the race that was held. Leslie Desaya actually got the victory for the men's side, an Ethiopian runner who ran the race in 2 hours, 10 minutes, and 22 seconds, pulling away, getting his first Boston Marathon title, which should be celebrated as it's often forgot about. And Kenya's Rita Jeptu ran hers in 2 hours, 26 minutes, and 25 seconds, breaking away, winning by 40 kilometers, winning her second Boston Marathon. And I know these runners are often forgot about due to what happened on this day, and for a reason, but they still had great moments on this day as well. And that should be celebrated because they did not get to celebrate their win. Now, was this the worst violence done in a sporting event? It had a lot of injuries compared to some others. There was the Munich Olympic massacre, where a Palestine group, Black September, took 11 Israeli athletes, coaches, and athletes during the Olympics, where 12 ended up killed, including one German police. In the Mexican City Olympic massacre, happened just days before the Olympics, where 100 people were killed. But this had the most injuries of any sporting event ever. Now, the death toll is lower than some other ones that have happened, but it's hard to compare these, and all of them are tragedies. But the Boston had the most severe injuries of all of these by number total. Death total was lower, but it was still a bad moment. And I don't want to compare these because they're all bad. I'm just going to say Boston Marathon was bad every single time someone dies or is injured at a sporting event that's not on the field. It's bad, no matter what. Only sports injuries should happen at sporting events. Fact. I want to thank you for listening to today's Daily Sports History. If you want, there's a link in the description to sign up for our newsletter. I started on Substack. You can sign up. It gives you a written version of the podcast to read quickly if you can't have time to listen. That way you don't miss a single episode as well. There's a link in the description for you to sign up for that. And come back tomorrow for more Daily Sports History.